Give me a go, no go for launch. Booster.
Go.
Retro.
Go.
Vital.
We're go flight.
Guidance.
Guidance go.
Surgeon.
Go flight.
Ecom.
We're go flight.
GNC.
We're go.
Telmu.
Go.
Control.
Go flight.
Procedures.
Go.
Inco.
Go.
FAO.
We are go.
Network.
Go.
Recovery.
Go.
Capcom.
We're go flight.
Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
You're listening to Our Next Giant Leap, a podcast that's out of this world. And now, here is your host, Mike Williams.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the pilot podcast of Our Next Giant Leap. Thank you, Brianna, for that great introduction. I am your host, Mike Williams, and this is being recorded live on TalkShoe. TalkShoe is a service that enables anyone to easily create, join, or listen to live interactive discussions, conversations, podcasts, and audio blogs. This show is a bi-weekly 15-minute show recorded every other Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time if you live in the U.S. So if you want to listen to the live podcast, go to www.talkshoe.com, and at the top where it says caller ID, just enter the number 75386, click go, and that will take you to the show page where you can listen live, ask questions, or jump in on the conversation. Or you can call in at 724-444-7444. That's a U.S. number, and enter the same caller ID there. Of course, you can also download the podcast from TalkShoe, iTunes, or from my website, www.mikewilliamsinc.wordpress.com. First, I want to thank everyone that is listening in on the podcast and those of you in the chat room. I hope you find this show both fun and exciting. I'm not going to get too technical with this show. That's not my goal. I want it to be fresh, fun, and informative at the same time. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Joliet, Illinois, and moved to Central Florida when I was 13 years old. I've lived in the same area ever since, which is located on Florida's Space Coast. My fascination with the space program stems back to when I was about 13. I did grow up during the space shuttle era and became totally fascinated by the space shuttle and NASA's human space exploration program. Now, I don't claim to be an astronaut or a rocket scientist, but I am a space enthusiast, and I do believe it is encrypted in our human DNA to explore. I believe we should go out into the unknown and expand our knowledge of the universe as much as possible. We should ask ourselves, what if Christopher Columbus had never went exploring? Where would we be today? Okay, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about the show itself and some of the subjects that we're going to be discussing. At some point, I'd like to interview some people who are currently employed in the space industry. I'm working on that, or who have previously been in that field. This program is about NASA's human exploration of deep space and its journey to Mars. Why are we going, and what is it going to take to get us there? Some of the pieces of the puzzle for deep space travel and NASA's Journey to Mars program are already being put together, and there are many. The first major piece of the puzzle is the International Space Station, traveling 220 miles above the Earth and at a speed of about 17,500 miles an hour. It is there where we have had a constant presence in space for over the past 15 years. The space station has taught us how to live and work in space for long periods of time, a key element if we want to send humans to Mars in the future. Number two, the numerous robotic and orbiter missions that have been sent to Mars over the past 50 years has vastly improved our knowledge about the Martian planet. Number three, the Orion spacecraft. Orion has already had its first test flight, orbiting Earth and reaching farther out into space than any man-made spacecraft has done in over 40 years. And number four, the SLS, or Space Launch System. When the SLS heavy lift launch vehicle is complete, it will be the tallest rocket ever built. Just to give you an idea of the size, it'll be about 400 feet tall and be able to carry over 130 metric tons in its final configuration. This is the rocket that will carry humans to a near-Earth asteroid, to Mars, and beyond. So those are some of the things we're going to be talking about on this show. Today is kind of an informal show. It's a get-to-know-you show, if you will. You get to know a little bit about me, about the show, and I get to know a little bit about you, the audience, what you like, what you dislike, etc. Now is the segment of the show I like to call our question and answer part. I've got some questions here that people have either sent in by email or voicemail. I picked out a few. And the first question is from Richard, and he asks, how much does it cost for NASA to send an astronaut to the International Space Station via the Russian Soyuz spacecraft? Well, Richard, that's a great question. NASA has signed a deal back in April that will keep American astronauts flying on Russian spacecraft through early 2017 at a cost of about $70.7 million per seat. That's about $8 million per astronaut than the previous contract. $8 million more, excuse me. The $424 million deal, which was announced back in April, is good for 6 seats aboard the Russian Soyuz. Under the agreement, Soyuz vehicles will ferry NASA astronauts to and from the International Space Station through 2016, with return and rescue services extending until 2017. NASA has been dependent on the Soyuz since the retirement of the Space Shuttle fleet in July of 2011. Boeing and SpaceX are currently building spacecraft that will take American astronauts to the space station under NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which will reduce the cost to about $58 million a seat. And that information comes to us from space.com. Thank you, Richard, for that great question. Our next question is a voicemail, and it comes to us from Jeremy, and we'll play that clip for you right now.
Is there life on Mars? If so, what does it look like?
Another great question. Thanks for calling in, Jeremy. And that's the $100 million question, right? Is there life on Mars? The holy grail that scientists have been talking and wondering about for decades. For the last several years, the answer has been follow the water. Where there is water, that's most likely the area that life has at one time existed. Not in the form of little green men, but in the form of microorganisms. Now, there isn't much liquid water on Mars due to the makeup of its current atmosphere, but spacecraft like Spirit, Opportunity, and currently the Curiosity rover have found evidence of dried up river and lake beds. They have even found water in the form of ice under the surface and especially near the planet's polar ice caps. And some scientists believe that if we dig in the right areas and deep enough where the surface radiation and toxic atmosphere don't reach, we may actually find a planet teeming with microscopic life. So we don't have all the answers yet about life on the red planet. But what we do know is that millions of years ago, Mars was once like Earth, with rivers and lakes, and something drastically went wrong. We don't have definite proof that life exists or did exist on Mars yet. A great question, Jeremy. Thanks for calling in. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, you can leave me a voicemail at 321-351-8539. Or you can email me at mikewilliams573@gmail.com. So with NASA's journey to Mars underway, I thought it might be good to go over a few facts about Mars. For instance, the Romans named Mars after the god of war. Mars' red color is due to iron oxide, also known as rust, and has the consistency of talcum powder. Literally, the metallic rocks on Mars are rusting, and that's where we get the red color from. The atmosphere on Mars is about 100 times thinner than Earth's and is 95% carbon dioxide and 2.7% nitrogen. No human could ever survive the low pressure of Mars. If you went to Mars without an appropriate spacesuit, the oxygen in your blood would literally turn into bubbles, causing immediate death. That's an excruciating way to die. Mars lacks an ozone layer, therefore the surface of Mars is bathed in a lethal dose of radiation every time the sun rises. And only a third of all spacecraft sent to Mars have actually been successful. If you want to find out more about NASA's journey to Mars, one of the best websites to go to is NASA's own at nasa.gov/journey to Mars. And another good site about robotic missions to Mars is mars.nasa.gov. I want to thank everyone for joining me today for the Pilot Podcast, whether you joined in live on the phone, via computer, the chat room, or you downloaded this podcast. I want to thank all of you. I also want to give a special thanks to Brianna Pape, who has helped me produce this show and has also helped with the intro, and Jeremy Pape, who has been one of the voices you've heard in some of the many promos leading up to the show. Our next episode will be December 8th, the ISS, our stepping stone to Mars. It will air live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time here in the U.S. on TalkShoe. For more information on how you can join in live on TalkShoe, or for all the show notes and links, go to my website, mikewilliamsinc.wordpress.com, and click on the podcast button. If you have any questions or comments, you can drop me a voicemail at 321-351-8539 or send me an email at mikewilliams573@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at our next giant LP, all one word. For those of you here in the U.S., Thanksgiving is this coming Thursday. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Try not to eat too much turkey. Thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.